As President of the United States, I will always put America first.
Welcome. This is Stillshadows. I'd like to invite you on a journey, a short one, as we walk through and take a look at some of the differences that are very important, so we don't get caught into thinking that what we're seeing today in the streets of democratically run cities, the riots, the burnings, the protests, that we don't really identify that as a fight for civil rights. And I say that because it's important always to keep history in context so we don't repeat it. And the fact is that the civil rights leader Martin Luther King back in the 1960s laid the blueprint for civil rights that really lifts up the whole boat with everyone in it. I'd like to help you see that in case you don't know or you don't remember what the 60s was like. Sure, there were rogue fractions of violence and riots in the streets and burnings and such and killings, but not on a scale anywhere close to this. The 60s was peaceful with a message that brought forth legislation and real freedom to all American blacks. More importantly, though, I want to point out a main characteristic that should be staring at us right in the face, and it is, and many of us see it, but many more of us do not, thanks to the manipulations of the state media and others. The two main characteristics that are screaming at us between civil rights in the 60s and civil rights, as they're calling BLM and the protests and such, in 2020. One is a peaceful, democratic means of communicating and gaining understanding and achieving change that is progressive and all-encompassing for lifting up. But these people are the exact opposite. They want us to forget that dream and work and think that it's our mission and our responsibility, especially for the Muslims, to tear that all down and to do this change by means of violence and overthrow and desecration and demise of American values, American system of law. This is down to the brass tacks. No joke about it. Today, we have Black Lives Matter organization, entirely a different matter, as well as Islam and the Jihad Muslims, who seek to overthrow the United States and all that she's been built on, and fill us with a nation and a world of hate and Marxism and tyranny. So will you come with me on this little journey? Grab yourself a beverage and a snack if you like. And let's take a walk into 2020 and what they are calling civil rights that aren't civil, and it just ain't right. Shall we go? After all of life is a gamble. Are you willing to take a look? Let's start.
What they're really creating is a system where Black Americans are never going to try and therefore never going to get ahead. And that is where the real racism exists. In telling somebody that they're less than repeatedly so they don't even try. And that racism is being executed by and large by the left, by white liberals, and by the Democrat Party.
Brothers and sisters, I want you to know that Black Lives Matter began in Ferguson And it did not just make a moment in the history of civil rights, it created a movement. Without a movement, it all becomes so temporary. And a month later, it goes out of style, it's forgotten, until we see a man in New York saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." And moments later, he's dead. And then we see Freddie Gray, who was able to walk and talk and even run. All of a sudden, he's dead. His spine is completely broken. But no one has a reasonable excuse as to why so many young black males have been killed, murdered in the past year or the past 2 years. So I was supposed to talk about how all this relates to Martin Luther King's dream. I'm going to ask you, personally, I would like for you to forget Martin's dream and not descend into your own. Movements are not built on dreams. What we need is a conscious, young, and old advocates ready to change. A world that has become terrible for not just black people, but for people of color and people seeking religious integrity. And if we aren't prepared to unite for a struggle for blacks, for Hispanics, for Muslims, if we are not prepared to wage this struggle, then we will fail. But first, we need to make a conscious admission to ourselves that Black lives matter. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'd like for you to be perfectly honest. Now, first of all, I see very few black faces in the audience, and that bothers me, and it should bother you. But I want to know, and raise your hand, how many of you have had more than one black person in your house for iftar, for dinner, in the last 2 years? Now, that's pretty shameful. Because if we cannot wage a struggle from outside, if we're not prepared to change what's inside, you look across the communities, the Muslim communities and centers and societies across America, and you do not see Black American Muslims represented fairly. If you look at the shores in masjids across the country, rarely do you see any representation for Black American Muslims in order that they have a place to give their voice about the future of Black American Muslims in America. Something is wrong. And if we can't cure what's wrong, then maybe, quite possibly, we won't be able to cure the deficiencies that lies within us as an ummah. Now, those who are prepared to continue to dream Martin's dream, and those who continue to quote Martin Luther King, preaching for nonviolence for the weak, while they are promoting the biggest guns for the strong, they will not be able to stop murders like Eric Gardner, Freddie Gray, Sandra Bland, and a 12-year-old child by the name of Tamir Rice. We must be willing to be awakened from our dreams and understand the pain that exists within marginalized people before falling asleep again and accomplishing nothing. But a dream is a tricky thing. When you wake up, you will probably forget a lot of what has happened. Since Martin Luther King's dream, opportunity for black people is an aberration to many white people who see it as a threat to a power structure which continues to dominate them and other people of color. We should not be seduced. Don't be tricked or seduced by the notion that Obama's presidency signals the end of racism, the civil rights movement, or the struggle of black equality. Obama taught the nation how being black is not a distortion of American ideals, but rather a celebration of them. But what came after that was very different. Still, Obama's foes or enemies tried to kick him to the curb of political life by demonizing him as a threat to the American life. He was bitterly denounced as a communist, socialist, Marxist, terrorist, traitor. And then their biggest insult or allegation against him was that he was a Muslim, as if there was something wrong with being a Muslim. Obama thought because of his cross-racial upbringing that he might be able to affect change amongst the whole. But actually, after Obama's elections, the demons of racism, the hoods.
Oh, wow. I'll bet you didn't catch that. She said, the hoods. What wordsmithing right there, that is. Just pure propagandic tactic. A real Hegelian dialectic. Throw the image of who wore hoods, who wears hoods, trying to make it against the invisible they, air quotes, huh? No, I bust you. I call BS on that. B-U-S-ted. Busted. 'Cause look right here. It wasn't the Republicans who started wearing hoods. It was Republicans who stopped slavery. Get your facts straight. Get straight your facts. Oops.
Of the devil of racism came straight out of their head. And there was a campaign not just to marginalize Obama, but also other people of color. The Oval Office is the ultimate symbol of power, of national access to do things to create change. If the levers of influence are weighed with bias and unjust privilege, they swing away from the promise of democracy, which is America's greatest legacy. Today, Americans of all types can be proud that the ideals of the founders, though trump over the centuries of racism and sexism, have almost found us, but they have not found us completely. A black president cannot end black misery. So if anybody thinks Obama has the backs of black people, he doesn't. And that's not going to happen. A black president can't be a civil rights leader or a preliminary or primary crusader for social justice. A black president won't stop racism or erase bigotry. You all know that. A black president is not the president of blacks alone, but the president of the United States. The election of Barack Obama symbolizes the resurrection. It was supposed to symbolize the resurrection of hope and restoration, a belief in a country that has often failed to treat black citizens as kin. For millions of blacks still remain abandoned by social neglect and cultural isolation. And that cultural isolation is not just in the streets of Chicago, Los Angeles, and Baltimore, but even amongst our own, even amongst the masjids in America. We have a great opportunity to wake up and think clearly, to articulate criticize ourselves sharply. What it means to behave according to the Sunnah, what it means to develop the relationship that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had with Bilal. If we choose to do this, we will do away with racism within, and we will be able to deal with the forces of opposition against people of color from without. Martin Luther King argued for a colorblind society. That didn't happen. And right now...
Oh, it hasn't happened, huh? It was darn close to being happened, lady. Miss Sabra, let me tell you, it wasn't until the Democrats got desperate with their hate and disgust for Trump that racism has gone this full-blown. And it's people like you who are aiding and abetting the demise of civility and peacefulness. So put that in your burqa and wear it.
We are feeling the effects of religious racism and intolerance that we have not seen in over 100 years.
No. It's your BLM, your precious beloved BLM, who are out in the streets murdering and rioting and looting and burning down cities and taking them over in zones. And like criminals, they are demanding to get rid of police and law. Oh, I gotta calm down. Gee.
Basically, you are the new black people of America. You are the people being imprisoned. You are the people being denied rights. You are the people being denied the dream.
The dream? What dream? Is she schizophrenic? She said forget Martin Luther's dream. So now what dream is she talking about? And I still haven't heard her tell us who the heck they are. Who are they, huh? This is all made up narrative and propaganda. These are not facts. This is not information. Has any validity. This is all just a narrative to incite and brainwash and mobilize troops. Please, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, please hear this and see this. This is the way it is. And this is the man that they worship.
But if we could go beyond ourselves and our cultural ignorance and join hands with other advocates that are struggling for the rights of blacks, Hispanics, and other marginalized people of color, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless not only those who have been denied their rights, but Muslims who are being denied their rights right now. When I see Republicans candidates talk about killing the wives of children, the wives and children who they have a problem with, Muslim children, because they have a problem with entities they have defined as terrorists, this has gone way beyond anything we could have thought, maybe even 20 years ago. Did we stand up? Did we say you will not murder our families?
Oh, no, woman. You don't know the millions of babies that have been killed in minority communities in Planned Parenthood clinics. Planned Parenthood, founded by Margaret Sanger, profound, outspoken racist eugenicist. Get your facts straight. You haven't studied. Shame on you. Do your homework.
Because you have an agenda. They're not just against so-called groups, they're against you. And just as these black brothers and sisters have been murdered in the streets, if we don't stand, you will see Muslims murdered in the streets. For no other reason than that they say, La ilaha illallah. Allah has empowered you to create justice on the earth. Let's clean our own house first. Let's recognize that we are the community that staged a revolution across the world. If we could do that, why can't we have that revolution in America? Why can't we stand up against human indecencies and the lack of civil rights? Why can't we tell those leaders who value the lives of their own children, but willingly, openly are ready to deny the value of the lives of Muslim children? Our youth today believe that they have been let down. Some of them have chosen paths in the wrong direction because we didn't provide them with the right direction. We didn't let the history of Islam affect us to the point.
Whoa, what? Stop the music. She said we haven't let Islam history affect us? Please study the history of Islam. That's exactly what they are ambitious to do again. Everything they've done in history. This woman is a smooth wordsmither. Propaganda, lady, propaganda. Danger, danger, danger.
That we stand against oppression regardless of who is being oppressed.
Wait, say what? Then you should be backing up all these people that are being oppressed and abused in the streets in Portland and Seattle and Baltimore, Chicago. Come on.
We cannot turn our backs from a social movement that is seeking to claim victory for all of us. If we do that, we don't deserve to be part of that victory.
Victory? Now, just what is that victory? You're not going to tell us what it looks like, are you? No. Keep listening. It's not coming. We see it on our streets and in our democratically run cities now, don't we? Every day and every night.
Years ago, George Bush started refurbishing concentration camps that housed Japanese American. These were American citizens, yet they were defined as a threat to American society. Are we truly going to sit back and if you think it can't happen, it can happen? When people on the news are saying, we're only going to let Syrian Christians into the country, then there's only one step further away of being willing to segregate these Syrians who come here for justice, to be put away in places they don't belong. And if that happens, that means we haven't done our job. You are the children of the greatest man in history, Muhammad alayhi salam. You don't need another message. You don't need another blueprint about what you should do. You know what you should do. And if we do it, Allah has promised us the same victories that He granted to those who came before us. And today must be that start. I don't want any of you leaving here without dedicating yourself to a cause for civil rights. You don't have to wait for Anas, who came all the way from the UK, to tell you what your duties are, or brothers Siraj. You already know what it is. You're here to be reminded and to be empowered. And we look forward to you stepping up to the challenge. Because already we're late. Thank you very much. Brothers and sisters, I want you to know that Black Lives Matter began in Ferguson, and it did not just make a moment in the history of civil rights, it created a movement. Without a movement, it all becomes so temporary. And a month later, it goes out of style, it's forgotten, until we see a man in New York saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." And moments later, he's dead. And then we see Freddie Gray, who was able to walk and talk and even run. All of a sudden, he's dead. His spine is completely broken. But no one has a reasonable excuse as to why so many young black males have been killed, murdered in the past year or the past 2 years. So I was supposed to talk about how all this relates to Martin Luther King's dream. I'm going to ask you, personally, I would like for you to forget Martin's dream and not descend into your own. Movements are not built on dreams. What we need is a conscious, young, and old advocates ready to change. A world that has become terrible for not just black people, but for people of color and people seeking religious integrity. And if we aren't prepared to unite for a struggle for blacks, for Hispanics, for Muslims, if we are not prepared to wage this struggle, then we will fail. But first, we need to make a conscious admission to ourselves that Black Lives Matter. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'd like for you to be perfectly honest. Now, first of all, I see very few black faces in the audience, and that bothers me, and it should bother you. But I want to know, and raise your hand, how many of you have had more than one black person in your house for iftar, for dinner, in the last 2 years?
Started your testimony with eloquent words about the life and legacy of John Lewis, fighting systematic racism, voter intimidation, civil rights. The one thing that you have in common with your two predecessors, both Attorney General Sessions and Attorney General Whitaker, is that when you all came here and brought your top staff, you brought no black people. That, sir, is systematic racism.
I mean, what a bizarre thing to say, that if you walk into a room and you don't walk in with a person of color, you're perpetuating some sort of systemic racism. I mean, it makes no fundamental sense to say that depending on how many colored people are in the room determines whether or not the room is racist. And this is one of the things that people keep forgetting about America. We live in a majority white country, okay? So if you were in Uganda and you walked into a room and you saw majority black people, that would not be an example of systemic racism against white people. That would be an accurate reflection of the amount of white versus black people that live in the country. What black people are looking for right now, it seems, people like him who are race baiters, is to become a majority in every industry, in every room, on every sports team. And it doesn't work that way when you represent 13% of a population. This is such foolishness. An illusion that people are holding on to because they don't want to do hard work and they just wanted to be afforded all of these privileges in life without ever having to work. There was absolutely nothing that I cannot do as a black American in this country that a white American can do. So what they're looking for right now, these race baiters and these race hustlers, is they want more. They want extra credit. right? They want to be privileged. They want to be ahead of people. It's wrong. That is where the real racism is existing.
You know, Black Lives Matter, it started, you know, during enslavement, right? I mean, Black Lives Matter is an age-old movement that just changes names. It's been the civil rights movement. You know, it's been run by SNCC. It's been run by the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. It's been John Lewis's movement. You know, it's been Dr. King's movement.
No, people in the civil rights era were actually fighting for something. They were actually fighting to put an end to racist practices. What they were really asking for was for the country to actually recognize the things that are promised and afforded to every human being under the Constitution of the United States. And we weren't getting that. We actually weren't recognizing the words of our own Constitution. And then we suddenly did. And what really happened during that period when Blacks were finally granted true freedom in the forms of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is people went, oh my goodness, now I'm suddenly responsible for myself. Now I actually have to put in the work ethic. Now I can't complain or point to a systemic injustice. And then we started seeing this whole era of white guilt, right? Of saying that, well, no matter what any Black person does, they're guiltless and they're blameless. And we can point to 400 years of slavery to say that's the reason you got a bad grade on your test. What they're really creating is a system where Black Americans are never going to try and therefore never going to get ahead. And that is where the real racism exists. And telling somebody that they're less than repeatedly so they don't even try. And that racism is being executed by and large by the left, by white liberals, and by the Democrat Party.
Not just a Black people concern. This is the public realizing if they're coming for Black lives, they're eventually coming for yours. They're eventually coming for your security and peace.
Candace, who are they? What narrative's being created here, and who does it serve?
No idea. I'm assuming they must be the police officers, because since Black Lives Matter right now, their main thing, the big piece of the puzzle is defund the police. The police officers are going to come for your life, which is just again extraordinarily dishonest. And it's incredible to me that these people are allowed to be on the air and allowed to keep spinning these lies. When police officers save lives, right? When the biggest threat to a Black person on the streets is another Black person, statistically speaking, and nobody wants to have that conversation because again, this is a narrative. This is not a truth. This is a narrative that is being spun during an election cycle to create division. And so she knows she's being dishonest, and it's incredible to me that she can continue to do that with a straight face, knowing that she is bringing about harm upon the very community that she claims to be speaking on behalf of.
So there it is. I've tried to pretty much express what I had to say through the images. And hopefully that made the point of contrast between then and now, I would say. I like then better. I don't think we should forget Martin Luther King's dream. It brought forth such great results. And look at the great prosperity, expansion, and growth in Black communities that soon developed after the passing of the legislation for civil rights. That is civil rights. What Black Lives Matter are doing is confounding, confusing, and nothing much of civility exists within it. Then you go to their website, and of course, they don't even hide the fact that they are trained. I want to emphasize the word trained Marxists. They want to take our private property. They want to burn down America and everything that symbolizes what makes her independent, great, and powerful. These people, if they get power, as they have linked up through democratic politician structures and the big globalist bankers, this time period and era within our politics and rights in this country is more a threat now than ever in my entire lifetime. I've been alive for over 60 years. I'm telling you, nothing like this has had this much of an organized, destructive impact in so many cities. And it is not a coincidence that the majority of cities where the greatest amount of protest rioting and all that is going on. It's quite a laundry list of destruction and unrest. That is Black Lives Matter in the hourglass. Just look at that. They're all cities that have been strongholds of Democratic politicians and governments, sucking all the money dry right out of those cities. It's time, folks. It's time that we wake up and recognize there's nothing to do with civil rights about Black Lives Matter and about what America is and the good that Donald Trump has already done and the stand he's taken. Is he perfect? Of course not. He's human. There's things we don't know about him. There's things, by golly, we don't like about him. But you gotta say, what other choice is there? What we're looking at here now playing out, we've got Pelosi and Schumer and all of them going right along with this crap. And they're all backed by this fake lying media power structure that is completely sucked into the mandates of the UN and all the finger agencies and organizations and foundations and the money laundering. Oh, please, people. That's why I take the time to make these videos. And this did take a lot of time. So please, if you like what you've seen, will you help me get this out and share this video? Share it all over your social media. That really helps the most, and I'll greatly appreciate it. And then if you haven't yet, will you please subscribe? And be sure to click that little notification bell to get updates for when I go live or upload new content. Thanks so much for watching. It's been a pleasure bringing this to you. It's been painful pleasure. It's hard to see this nation being destroyed and terrorized. And it seems to be as though they're getting away with it. Gradually, slowly, eating away, chipping away at our rights, our freedoms, and our identity. Okay, so there it is. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Till next time. To thy own self be true. Night.